Hello, everybody. Well, thank you for that introduction, Dean. That was wonderful. I work in engineering excellence, the Trustworthy Computing Group, and I work on a product called Quality Essentials. Trustworthy Computing Group is responsible for making sure all the products that Microsoft build are accessible, secure, private, and comply with about 8 other corporate and federal standards. So that's what Quality Essentials is. It's a Microsoft tool for Microsoft engineers to ensure that their products are compliant. So what's that have to do with financial software? The exact same type of requirements that financial software have to meet are those that our internal products have to meet. And we are working on 4-week sprints. So the point I wanted to make is that very rapid UX design and research isn't just for fun consumer products, but for real serious and legally binding products as well on an enterprise scale. And so here's the problem I was confronted with. Typically, it took about 3 weeks to define a study, meet with the team, find out what they had to do, and then actually recruit the people, get the lab, get it reserved, get it configured, a week to run it, execute it, clean up the lab, write the study, debrief the teams. That's 5 weeks. I mentioned we were doing this in 4-week sprints, right? And then the problem got worse. Our designer left. And now I had to do design and research in 4-week sprints. Now, there's one advantage to that. If you're doing the design and doing an evaluation, you never have an argument. It's just a wonderful situation. And so if you're not familiar with how sprints work, it looks like this. That represents a 4-week sprint. The first portion is just devoted to planning. What are we going to build? The rest of the month is devoted to building it and testing it. And this is a large team. There are 31 developers and 23 testers. UX is integrated into the PM, the program management team. There are 6 of those and 1.5 of us. So those 6 PMs will be responsible for 1 to perhaps 6 features. So some of those have UX. So generally, we're cranking through about somewhere between 6 and 12 features every month that have to be designed. And so we've broken that down into 4-week sub-sprints, if you will. The first week is we understand what the use cases are, and we brainstorm and sketch. Now, sketching and testing, you're going to see, comes out a lot. This is absolutely critical, sketching and testing. And there's also an implied phase in front of this, which this is just a short snapshot. And that implied phase is there's a whole bunch of work that went on before we could work on the specs for sprint and before the devs could build it in their time. And so, let me back up for a moment. After those sketches are done, they're good enough to get feasibility. We can get feasibility from the devs with just a sketch. We can refine it. Those guys have great ideas. We do the sketches again. We test. Refine those into wireframes, which are a little bit more high fidelity. We cost it. Those are good enough to get actual dev costs. Test it again, create the final red lines, put it into the spec, and then we're all done. So here's some design basics I want to cover. First, design isn't decoration. Design isn't just a plan. Design is a process. Okay? And it's a process that's very well suited for multidimensional, non-deterministic problems. In other words, people problems who are immensely complex and very, very unpredictable. And the beauty of this process is it draws upon all those numerous talents, those human talents that we have, such as logical and mathematical abilities and language skills and empathic and emotional sensitivities, visual, artistic talents, as well as perhaps kinesthetic and musical, because there is a look and a feel to UI. That sort of suggests a cadence and a kinesthesia about it. So how does one actually deal with that? Obviously, there must be this superhuman design hero that can actually deal with all of those problems, all of those talents, and create a solution. Well, no, that's not actually the solution. The solution is that design is a process, and the process involves teamwork. And so it's not an individual design hero. It is a team hero, which requires that everyone collaborate. No one owns design. Everyone gets to contribute. Everyone gets to participate. And all the talents that would be distributed across a wide group of people were brought in a very healthy, I might even say affectionate environment in order to produce brainstorm solutions. Someone later today was going to talk about the infinite resources. One of those infinite resources are ideas, and that's what sketching helps manifest, brings out the creativity that's within each and every one of us. Now, since we're doing very fast design, we have to rely upon some principles to make decisions. You can see the Windows 8 principles and banners around the room. So we embodied those, embraced those, dropped a few which weren't relevant to us, and added a few more. One was radical simplicity. Since we're working on compliance software, it's immensely complicated, it's very legally binding, and there's a lot of information on the screen. So I made a principle. If there is a pixel illuminated on the screen, we have to justify why that pixel is illuminated. If you can't, it doesn't belong there. And using that kind of principle, we cleared away everything else. Now that means there's structure and flow in that visual design. And so there's where we needed to bring in some of those skilled principles of visual design to show what's important and what's actionable. And we had to learn what the toys are in our developers' toolbox. So if we're designing something, we're not suggesting something they don't build. We need to have those, if you will, tinker toys. And so there was another principle, which is hire for your deficiency. So you can imagine that may mean a lot of hiring, but the biggest deficiency for me was a visual design because, as Dean said, it was PhD, not MFA. I have no visual design skills. So we hired a great designer on a part-time basis, and this is Andrea. Okay, so those are the principles. What are some of the practices? This is what it looks like. I actually did this presentation to Judy Ramey's Technical Communications 521 seminar back in March. And maybe some of you were there, but at that point in time, I suggested this is what we're going to do. Today, I'm closing the loop and saying this is what we're doing. We do formative research. We've been doing it weekly from May to October. We pre-recruit 3 participants every Wednesday. I just have a general screener, so I get people in. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing every Wednesday. I just know there's going to be 3 people there. So it's very, very informal. We just use a conference room, nothing fancy. We use daily builds, so I get real-time feedback on what we're building. Sometimes it breaks, sometimes it doesn't. We evaluate the sketches. The team is invited. It's just a big old conference room. We debrief the team right in the conference room. There's no reports. We record it with a link so we have a record, and I can distribute it with a link because they can view it live. And over these 50 research sessions over the past 5 months, we've identified probably 200 issues, both large and small. We also do the standard stuff, validation studies, quarterly, N of 10. We focus on the end-to-end scenarios, and we hire a vendor to do that. It's about $7,500. Sketching is critical. It's so important. It's fast. It's cheap. It allows you to take your thoughts and externalize them. So if you and I are having a conversation, it's like you and me. It's like us talking about this thing. It helps make our assumptions explicit, both my assumptions on how it's implemented, my assumptions how people are working. It stimulates conversation, which is the critical thing, and that helps tap into that infinity of ideas. So I'm going to tell you a story. Now, that's a really bad picture, and I know it's a bad picture, and that's actually the point. This is a photograph on a screen. Sandeep, one of our PMs, walked into the room and said, hey, walked to my office and said, I have this feature. And he begins to describe it to me. So I walk up into the board, and I make this really coarse drawing. And that bump up on top, he knows what that is. That's this tab in the product we call the Determined Procedures tab. And that like cross thing line there, that was to represent the spreadsheet-like grid that is also in it. So that's all it took. That externalized what we were talking about. And then we spent 20 minutes not talking about his design, but what were the use cases, what were the user values, what were their motivations, what was the business value, what were their intentions, what were they going to accomplish, how would their behavior change. All of that stimulated by a very coarse, primitive drawing. After 20 minutes of understanding and sharing, then we generated 2 other alternatives. At this point, we were stuck. It was like, oh, we got 3. But I said, Sandeep, we need 6. You have to get 6 ideas before we can move forward. But he couldn't, and I decided, well, I'm going to go up. And I said, Sandeep, I'm going to put up a really stupid idea. And I wrote it down. And I guarantee it was a stupid idea. And he's like, yeah, it's a dumb one. Like, yeah. So then that led me to write up a stupider idea. So here we have D and E, 2 known stupid ideas. Now the beauty of this is like the algebra of ideas. You know how in algebra you take a negative times a negative and by God it's a positive? This is like the algebra of a dumb idea times dumb idea, and we came up with a great idea. And we recognized it as soon as we wrote it down, and we had been stuck earlier. We just couldn't come up with this. Now, we could have run with that, but no, we had to take it one more step. You'll notice the P's and C's. We now got out of ideation mode and went to analysis mode and decided that each one would have a pro and a con, a pro and a con, and we evaluated it. Ultimately, we decided that F was actually the best idea on the board, and if we had to do anything, we would do that, but we would also supplement it with his original idea. This was incredibly important, and we want to replicate it. So there are 3 design principles that are success principles for this. One, it's a safe and open environment. It's a fun environment. Sandeep comes in, we're talking, we're laughing like, hey, got a dumb idea? Yeah, let's write that down. And also the other important thing is the quantity. You got to get a lot of ideas to get a good idea, and there are no bad ideas. And another real important point, keep it light in process, emotional tone, so that people are free and open. Microsoft sometimes has to have everything well thought out, like, by God, I'm not saying this till it's perfect. Nah. We got to change the culture, and we are changing the culture. When we do that, truly, magic can happen. So here's the design reality. You know the problem, right? You're doing design and research. I'm not a designer. We have to do this stuff in 4 weeks. Well, here you go. Now, oh, you think perhaps I'm drowning myself in an alcoholic haze, perhaps. Well, not really. This is actually my design kit. So who needs Photoshop? It's pencils with erasers, it's Post-it notes, it's scissors. And that's what we use. So there it is, dumped out on the table. It also makes, you can fold up and roll up paper in there quite nicely. And so reflecting back, you've seen this already. So now what does it look like on the ground? On week 1, we meet and we just draw stuff. You'll see up there are, well, use cases or the users and what they're trying to accomplish and what are some options and how will their behavior change. So this is so everyone understands our users. And so then we sketch. It's like, hey, what can we do on a whiteboard? We get some ideas, talk about them, refine them. Week 2, look at this. Isn't this, I love this picture. Look how happy she is. That is where ideas come from. And notice how fast that pencil's moving. This is rapid sketching. This is the only action shot that I have. So, and there it is. There's a bunch of sketches. There was 15 sketches for one little feature just knocked off in about 20, 30 minutes. Now we take them to the devs, and the devs love sketches. They're looking at this, and they're telling me if it's feasible from the client side, from the server side, from the integration layer. They can do it, and in the background, you'll see there's even other sketches. We revise these based upon feasibility because they're just sketches, plural, and they come up with great ideas that no one ever thought of. Every week we test. It's in a conference room. There it is. It's just me, user, designer, team. That happens every week. Week 3, we take those really coarse sketches and we try to clean them up a little bit. But you'll notice this is like the real deal. You can see it in the background. We just get Post-it notes, plop them in, and sketch it. And this, again, is probably the 10th iteration of the original one. Those are revised, and that is sufficient for devs to cost it in terms of dev days. Just those kind of designs. Finally, after another test, we refine those into wireframes, high-resolution images, which go into the spec, and now they look exactly like what we're building. And then our key points, everyone contributes, because you remember it's a process from all of these talents. Keep it light. Happy, emotional tone, sketch, iterate, brainstorm. And what happens is the culture changes. There's a sense of pride, ownership, fun, and dare I say, love and affection within the team. Literally, developers are giving us their weekends to do some of this stuff because they're so emotionally engaged in it. And then, by the way, the final design activity. Now, you probably, or are you thinking I'm just going to like ply the users or ply our developers with whiskey and scotch? Well, actually, you'd be right on Fridays. Okay, thank you very much.